Greetings, fellow Halo gamers, and welcome to another Halo video. My name is Ben, aka Taport, and while some of you were hard at work putting bots to sleep last weekend, your boy Tappy was grinding away on the test range putting dummies to sleep and taking notes of all the weapons at our disposal there. Now, I've got a ton of data to share, so today I'm going to compile every weapon from the range into a neat little video. We're going to be going over the 13 different shooty things we got to try out. It's a lot, so I won't waste your time here getting started, but do note that some of this info could probably end up outdated, so at the very least, take it as a time capsule or trip down memory lane in the future. To start us off, let's take a look at an old favorite that's been with us all along, the MA40 assault rifle. Commonly shortened to AR, the MA40 is a fully automatic rifle fed from a 36 round box magazine that is happiest in close quarters. We've seen many changes to it and adjustments to the weapon throughout its lifetime, and it's been present in nearly every single installment of the Halo franchise, so I won't spend too long on it, but I've got to say that this could be my favorite iteration from the franchise. It's become viable in plenty of situations, but without the accuracy and reach of certain older iterations, that could sometimes bail the user out of poor decision making. It's now instead becoming a starting weapon with basic traits that you can rely on but not depend on that pushes you to move on to something more productive found on the map. The assault rifle kills in 17 shots to the body and 14 to the head without any damage drop off that I could detect on the range, but its recoil and spread do make it much more beneficial to aim for center mass most of the time and also makes engaging enemies outside of a medium distance counterproductive. Despite the AR's preference for closer ranges, tap firing is an option within certain ranges to compensate for spread, but still can't be recommended generally. Instead, you'll be much better off working with the weapon's strengths and sticking to fights that favor it over most other weapons. This method also comes with the added bonus that a melee can be used to compensate for ammo depletion or missed shots to close out a duel. That pretty much rounds out the assault rifle, which I'm sure you already know just as well as the back of your hand, so let's instead move on to another old friend that we're finally meeting again, who needs no introduction. The Battle Rifle, or BR, made its debut with the launch of Halo 2, where it became an icon in the franchise, even eclipsing the beloved Magnum of Halo Combat Evolved for some people. Delivering rapid 3-round bursts from a 36-round magazine that offered a chance to kill in only 4 trigger pulls was great, but now throw in a medium-range scope and it's a no-brainer how the BR so effortlessly staked its claim in the franchise. From the start, the rifle has been an extremely versatile weapon that could comfortably be relied on in more situations than any other. Aided by a grenade or charged plasma pistol shot, or even melee, it could easily kill in one follow-up shot at close ranges, and on the other hand of the spectrum, paired with a sniper rifle, the story hardly changes. That rhymes. I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but that just goes to show the status the BR holds among the Halo community. The core damage model of the battle rifle, with no help from its buddies, leaves it scoring a kill in 4 bursts to the head or 6 to the body. It does certainly depend on accuracy to live up to its full potential, but given some time, most people easily come to love it, and there's really not much I can or need to say about it here. Time to kill and fire rate are unchanged completely to my knowledge in Infinite, so if you've played any other entries to the franchise, then you know what you're getting into with this. I know some people would want a bigger spotlight on this bad boy, but in the interest of time, I'll be moving on. One final thought I wanted to share in closing is that the new model for the assault rifle makes the battle rifle feel valuable again, and together they strike a wonderful balance. I love BR starts in Halo, but for the first time in possibly ever, classic starts feel like they're back, and it's become a really important change to me. Now let's get on to one of those shiny new guns we got to see. The MK50 Sidekick is a new pistol that the community has finally gotten their hands on after a long wait following its initial reveal. This little pistol's exchange for the Magnum was controversial when fans first heard of the switch, and several comparisons were wrongly made to its counterpart. But in my opinion, it stood on its own in both form and function as soon as it was given a fair chance. Although it might not be as flashy or carry as much raw power as the only other pistol within the franchise to date, although it is maybe comparable to the ODST pistol, the MK50 knows its place as a sidearm and is obviously very happy to serve its purpose there. The first thing I noticed when testing out this pistol is that its name truly fits. The Sidekick can kill in 7 shots to the head or 9 shots to the body, meaning that even in perfect conditions, its 12-round magazine is only good for 1 kill without supporting damage like grenades or melee to secure any more kills before a reload is needed. This trait makes it the perfect escape plan to turn a battle into your favor when primaries are depleted, but also prevents it from becoming an unofficial primary like its older brother did in Combat Evolved. To its credit, the Sidekick does boast solid accuracy without any detectable damage drop-off, as well as a speedy reload that does keep it competitive at ranges the assault rifle can't handle. This means that in a lot of cases, it can have your back as much as or even more than your starting primary without stealing the show, and it certainly deserves recognition there. Although I suspect the Sidekick's older brother isn't going to be missing in action for long from Halo Infinite, I do think this little guy has already secured itself a spot of its own, especially without needing to be in its brother's shadow. Come to think of it, wielding 2 pistols in your loadout sounds like a pretty good time. Now, with some of the humans out of the way, let's change course and take a look at another new brute weapon called the Ravager. The Ravager is a slow burst firing banished weapon that's being introduced for the first time in Infinite. It's kind of hard to describe unless you've had a chance to use it, because it's really like nothing the franchise has seen before. You can kind of think of it as a brute shot that fires arcing bursts of incendiary plasma instead of grenades. And in case you're wondering, yes, it does in fact come complete with a gigantic bayonet welded onto the business end. As its name suggests, the Ravager packs a huge punch and can kill a Spartan within 1 volley to the head at apparently any range, or 2 to the torso. One quirk about the weapon, which is where I draw the brute shot comparison from, is that not only do direct hits deal massive damage, but they also have a splash effect that can compensate for inaccuracy at range, or even deal bonus damage to those nearby. Regarding the arcing trajectory, the bolts fired are heavy and drop considerably, even at medium ranges. Luckily, the Ravager's reticle does have ladder marks to help reliably place shots, but combining it with the bolt's travel time, it makes range fire much less effective, and trying instead to keep yourself in advantageous positions will likely get the best results. Something strange I found in testing that I wanted to point out is that the Ravager seems to have a secondary fire similar to the plasma pistol. If you hold down the primary fire, it will charge a shot that splashes burning plasma on the targeted area. Naturally, I found myself avoiding these puddles when I encountered them in matches, but in testing, I discovered the puddles seem to deal next to no damage. I'm unsure if this is a bug or tweak made for the flight due to balancing changes to come, or perhaps if there's a better use case for the alt fire altogether, maybe against vehicles. It's definitely something I'd like to circle back to in future flights or on launch, just because it's rather curious in my opinion, and I haven't seen it mentioned very much by anyone else. Being a plasma-based energy weapon, the Ravager doesn't use magazines or another ammo system worth mentioning, but instead has a heat function and limited energy to expend. Also, the passive cooldown is much higher than other plasma weapons, so manually venting heat is a good practice to prevent overheating. Under normal use, you can fire 4 volleys before the weapon overheats, but pacing shots can extend that to 5 or even more. As a result, it's kind of hard to give ammo numbers, and you just need to get a feel for it. My first reaction to the Ravager was that I really didn't like it, but that was on me. After playing around with it in the firing range and recognizing its weaknesses, I was able to adapt to my use of it and ended up seeing huge improvements immediately. I wouldn't say there's a real learning curve to its use, at least not more than on any other weapons, but you do need to play by its rules to get much out of it, and if you do that, you could find it being one of your favorites. Okay, now let's get into one of the big ticket items from the flight, the Skewer. This bad boy is almost indescribably brutal, as it fires a massive bolt at a high velocity that lodges into whatever or whomever it ultimately strikes. Originally intended as an anti-tank weapon, the Brutes naturally evolved its roles to include anti-personnel purposes as well. The Skewer doesn't really have many details to pick apart. It fires giant bolts, one at a time, with a slow but interesting reload in between. That just about covers it. I did find it a bit strange that it features a scope with 2 zoom distances, I guess presumably to target distant vehicles, but for the most part it basically does exactly what it says on the can. It skewers. Perhaps most comparable to the UNSC Spartan laser, this launcher kills with 1 bolt to anywhere on the body, in case you had guessed that. And we've also seen in a multiplayer trailer that it excels at killing vehicles, thanks to its high bolt velocity that makes compensating for travel time much easier compared to something like the Spanker. Unfortunately, as unique and satisfying as it is to no-scope players, the Skewer really doesn't leave much to unpack as a result of its more primitive nature. It has no added abilities worth mentioning that I'm aware of, but it honestly doesn't detract from it in any way. It's a risky pickup that leaves you vulnerable once fired, and I found the lack of punch-through on soft targets like other players questionable, but it's a challenging and fun weapon that's certainly left an impression on me. 343, if you're watching this, I know it's probably due to balancing reasons, but having that spike just travel through players I think would make for some really cool plays, and would make just the weapon a little more interesting in general. At this point, the UNSC has gotten some love, and the Brutes have gotten their moment too now, so let's take a look at another weapon from the Banished that has more Sangheili roots, and the only one of which we've gotten our hands on so far, the Pulse Carbine. The Pulse Carbine, as stated, is a new addition to the Halo arsenal similar to the Storm or Plasma Rifle of past games. It's easiest described as what the Battle Rifle is to the Assault Rifle, sacrificing fire rate in favor of overall damage output. I found the Pulse Carbine to be rather interesting because it strictly forces you to play by its rules, without much leeway or learning curve. Up close, the plasma is reliably accurate and can kill in 2 full bursts, but from even slightly farther ranges, and despite still only requiring the 2 bursts to kill, the plasma's travel time paired with slow fire rate make it extremely difficult to secure a kill. Now, that's not to penalize it, because I don't expect every weapon to hold my hand, but I found myself passing it up more and more frequently in favor of other weapons, and I can't remember a single time I saw another player equip it either. As a result of this, the Pulse Carbine is rather strictly a close-range role, and the fact that it's outshined by plenty of other weapons, including the Assault Rifle, I feel that it needs some work potentially to reach a state where it stands out and is a little bit more appealing to use. I don't really have much more to say about this one, I just didn't get enough use out of it, but I would love to hear your opinion on the matter, so do feel free to leave a comment letting me know what you thought about it. I'm just one gamer, so my opinion means squat on its own. While we're here anyway, how do you feel about any of the weapons we've gotten a hold of so far? I'm all ears and would love to have some discussion in the comments. So since we got some of the newbies out of the way, let's eliminate some of the veterans that really don't need much getting into. You know them and you love them, so here comes a little rapid fire segment and then a little surprise at the end of that, so do stay tuned. First up is the Plasma Pistol. Like I said, you know it, you love it. It pairs with several weapons into a satisfying 1-2 combo, and it's never ultimately changed since day 1 of Combat Evolved. In Halo Infinite, tap firing takes 17 shots to kill anywhere on the body, with 11 needed to the head, which isn't really worth the investment, and it's honestly really tough to land all those shots to secure an immediate kill. But holding fire overloads a plasma shot, which is where the fun really gets started. An overcharged shot has an EMP effect that momentarily disables vehicles or wipes the shields of its targets and leaves them vulnerable to a single follow-up shot from a battle rifle, commando, or melee attack for starters. Not to mention, the overcharged shot also has a tracking ability if in close enough proximity, so if you haven't already given the plasma pistol its fair chance, get on it because you're missing out. Nothing more needs to be said here other than remember that you're losing charge when you hold that alternate fire, so save it for when you know you need it. Next up is the S7 Sniper Rifle, capable of killing a standard enemy with 1 headshot or 2 body shots. This is another veteran that you just about need to have used if you've played literally any Halo installment previously. As mentioned before, this is a complementary weapon to the Battle Rifle, which could finish the job in case of a body shot to conserve some of the sniper's precious ammo. If you're in close enough proximity to your victim, by the way, a body shot and melee do get the job done just as well, but due to its limited magazine capacity of 4 rounds before requiring a reload, it's definitely better suited for longer range engagements and out of reach of other more efficient, closer range weapons. Again, we won't dwell on a staple, so let's just move on to one last returning legend known as the Spanker. The Spanker is yet another legend we know and love that, to the best of my knowledge, has also been featured in every Halo title, and for a long time was the sole anti-vehicle weapon at our disposal in the series. It uses a unique firing system that packs 2 slow-traveling rockets to fire before requiring a reload. Given its slow projectile speed, it is common to utilize its splash damage instead of direct fire on human opponents, but when dealing with vehicles, however, direct fire is recommended for maximum damage. Similar to the Skewer, this guy doesn't come with many strings attached, so it's the perfect weapon to round out this rapid fire section. And now, for that special surprise I promised. None of you probably know this, you really can't, because I've never mentioned it, but I have got 3 brothers, the youngest of which goes by Royathy, or Royish Charm on my Twitch streams. He's also the person you've seen get tased at least 3 times now on my channel, and potentially much more on Twitch streams where he is my follow notification. Anyway, he's come to visit me here in Florida from sunny California to share what he considers a, quote, really cool gun called the Needler. Take it away, Roy.
The Needler has always been an acquired taste. It's featured in every Halo installment where its effectiveness in campaign has generally been deceiving once taken into multiplayer, where it's outgunned by other weapons. Luckily, it eventually did find a more usable space in Halo 3, where it was reworked and given some much needed attention to be more viable, especially in close range situations. From then on, the Needler began to see more frequent use by players through later titles, where it issued a few more quality of life improvements. With the history aside, let's discuss some of the quirks of the weapon, and specifically what they mean for the Needler in Halo Infinite. The needles fired from this weapon don't do much damage individually, even with its relatively high rate of fire. The magic truly happens after they've found their mark, where they stick before detonating, dealing bursts of damage. The explosion also becomes more violent as needles are clustered together and eventually form a combined blast that kills enemies instantly. The trade-off is that unfortunately your target is able to return damage to you in the time it takes for the explosion to happen, which sometimes results in traded kills or missed kills entirely. Infinite's Needler features some nicely reworked features that borrow a bit from other installments and make dealing with your opponent much more manageable. That high rate of fire mentioned before and a generous helping of 26 needles paired with accurate tracking should be just about a guaranteed hit as long as your reticle is red. Only 12 hits are required to cause a fatal combined explosion to a Spartan, which means with some good timing and discipline, the Needler is good for 2 kills with some left in the tank, allowing for a faster, undepleted reload. But that is overall easier said than done in an actual gunfight. This has been Roy, aka also known as Roy, signing out. Peace.
And there he goes. Thanks so much again to Roy for being on the channel. He doesn't produce content of his own, but he didn't do too bad for a first try in my opinion. He knocked that recording out pretty quickly there. Unfortunately, our schedules clash quite a bit, which makes collaborating more difficult than it used to be, but it is a pleasure to have him on the channel, and I hope we can see him pop up again in the future. Anyway, it's time to keep on chugging and round out these remaining few weapons. So far, we've talked about almost all of your favorite factions and their weaponry, but now let's take a look at one of the newer, bit more mysterious, and perhaps a bit lackluster to several of you, weapon known simply as the Heatwave. As we've already gotten into, Halo Infinite's flight brought with it several new weapons. Potentially the most exciting and notable one of these comes in the form of the Heatwave, which is simplest described as a longer range scatter shot with a rework, and now also featuring an additional, more engaging mechanic. The Heatwave fires projectiles in batches of 6 per trigger pool that have the ability to bounce off of surfaces on impact. This allows the operator to ricochet them off of walls, floors, or ceilings for a chance to hit targets that are out of sight. But it's also important to mention that you can be damaged by your own shots, so keep that in mind when firing directly at a flat surface or in close quarters. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the ammo delivery / reload system for the Heatwave should be called, but it allows for 8 shots before requiring a reload in the form of a kind of pumping animation that's relatively quick and can be cancelled by shooting just like the classic shotgun in previous Halo titles. Something else that every gamer and their waifu probably knows by now is that it also has a unique alternate fire ability that allows you to switch between a vertical, more direct column of fire to a horizontal and more distributed plane of fire. This allows you to change it up based on needs, like using a vertical fire at a range or the horizontal one when encountering multiple enemies. When I first got my hands on the Heatwave, I was somewhat underwhelmed. I expected it to be much more of a power weapon that would behave like a true shotgun, or maybe similar to the railgun in Halo 4, but with a bit more use, I came to learn that it was kind of on me for not respecting its intended purpose and drawing conclusions based on no real information at the time. Although it definitely doesn't do as much damage as I expected, the Heatwave makes up for it by providing a full 8 shots to utilize with a common time to kill in-game of about 3 shots, depending on quite a few factors. And the bounce for the shots are also good for rebound damage on misses, which is helpful. The main things to remember when using the Heatwave is that it is definitely happiest at medium ranges, and especially with backup from another weapon, preferably a teammate's, to deal additional damage and finish the job. On its own, the Heatwave isn't a superstar, and you can find yourself on the back foot pretty easily, but overall it deals good broad damage that it's not being credited enough for yet. Given some time, I can definitely see some awesome plays coming out of it, and I'm excited to get more hands-on time to adapt to it for better play in the future. Now let's turn our attention back to the human weapons we haven't covered yet and give them their fair chance. We've still got the Bulldog and Commando to cover, but before we get into that, I wanted to remind you to like and subscribe if you like what you've seen so far. These videos take forever to make, and it's incredibly rewarding as a creator to be recognized for the effort given. In case you prefer not to, that's alright, but I still hope you're liking what you see. If not, you're always welcome to leave a comment, and I will do whatever I can to address that in future videos. Okay, now onto the Bulldog. We're kind of in a phase here of weapons that didn't turn out the way I, or maybe we as a whole expected, but can still hold their own once put to the test. So far, the only human shotgun we've experienced in Halo has always behaved a very certain way, and for whatever reason, I basically expected more of the same from the Bulldog. But again, that's on me. Needless to say, it's got its own quirks and perks that make it very interesting, and I'm not going to hold that against it. First off, the Bulldog is an automatic drum-fed shotgun, unlike the standard tube-loaded pump action we're more familiar with. It has a notably faster fire rate and longer range than its older brother, which continues to set it apart from the standard we've got to compare it with. So right out of the gate, the two are very different with almost no common traits. Aided by its 7-round drum magazine and a very quick fire rate, the Bulldog allows the user to much more comfortably move about the map without being as exposed as with the original, more campy shotgun we've come to know. The only downside as far as ammo goes is that given the magazine loading system, it can no longer fire while reloading and is left vulnerable in the process. So counting shots is useful to avoid getting into a jam. In most cases, this pup can secure a kill in about 2 to 3 shots, depending on how many pellets meet their mark. So with accurate fire, kills are quite easily achievable at medium ranges without much hassle, and I feel pretty secure stomping around the map with it in my loadout. Ultimately, the Bulldog ended up being one of the most satisfying weapons in the flight for me after I tried it out a few times. By the way, in case you never noticed, if you hold down the trigger, the Bulldog will actually sustain fire. It's not very useful since you'll often end up wasting shots that way as you're adjusting aim, but I wanted to mention that in case you didn't know. That just about covers the shotties, so let's move on. Here we are, everybody, the last gun on the list, and actually the one that I probably had the absolute most fun using. If you've been keeping track, you already know that next we're taking a look at the Commando. I had a feeling I'd like the Commando from the moment I laid eyes on it. The quick fire rate and visual design were interesting, and it was exciting to think that the battle rifle could finally have a partner in crime. Although it's got a pretty gnarly recoil pattern that makes sustained fire really difficult to be accurate with at long ranges, it feels really good to use when it's in the sweet spot and even beats out the battle rifle in a few aspects, especially at closer ranges where fire rate starts to become extremely important. Securing a kill with 10 shots to the body and 7 headshots, the 20-round magazine always has time to secure you some dubs as long as you're aiming. If that sounds a bit scary to be on the receiving end of, don't worry, because the Commando does come with a level of recoil that might be greater than every weapon but perhaps the SMG. For longer ranges, you can kind of compensate by keeping your reticle centered, countering the recoil pattern, but honestly, you're better off just tap firing or skipping unfavorable fights altogether to keep an advantage going. While I was streaming the flight, I heard a lot of people comment on how powerful the Commando looks, but rest assured, it's just an illusion, and it feels similarly powerful to the battle rifle overall, especially when factoring its ranged accuracy. If you like this video, please drop a sub. I upload every week on Sundays, so there's always more around the corner. Halo Infinite was such a treat, and I cannot wait to get more time in. It's been said far too many times now, but Halo really does feel like it's back, and in some ways better than ever. I want to thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot. These videos do take quite some time to put together. Thanks as well as always to my donors. You guys are the best. If you want more Tappy content in the future, I upload every Sunday, like I said, and also stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Twitch at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, if that sounds like something you'd enjoy. Links to all my socials are in the description as always, including on my website. I hope everyone has a safe week ahead and a fantastic day. This has been Ben, aka Taport. Peace.